All right. Genesis chapter 27, verse 34. Kishmo Esau et divrei aviv. Sorry, I got to speed up a bit just to make sure we get through. Vayitzak tza'aka gedula mara ad me'od. Vayomer le'aviv baracheni gam ani avi. When Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with a loud shout, a loud and bitter shout. Okay, an exceedingly loud and bitter shout. And he said to his father, bless me too. And it's weird that he says, Ani, my father, I, my father. And this has that same change of the vowel pointing in Ani that I mentioned before. Qimchi is going to talk a little bit about the language here. So this Kishmoa, this first part, continuing all the way to Gam Ani, I am also your son, no less than he is. This is how Qimchi is interpreting it. The letter Aleph in the word Ani has the vowel comments, although it does not signify a comma or something similar, as it is intended to stress the word I. We find a similar construction in Genesis 31:52. Imani lo avu elecha, where we also would not have expected the comments instead of the vowel patach. Here too, the comments is used to provide emphasis on the word I. Another example of the use of comments in the word ani as a means of emphasizing the speaker is in Psalms 29:28. Af ani dechor et nahu. I will appoint him also, or give him over as the firstborn. That's Qimchi's comment there. So it's interesting. It seems out of place almost, this word. You can kind of sense the anguish in Esau as he's blurting this out. Baracheni, bless me. Gam ani, also I. But he didn't need that. See, it's already got the I here. Bless me. Just remember, we are the right to say ni. So that ni means I. It does not mean iki, patum, whatever they say. Verse 35. Vayomer ba achicha v'mirma vayikach birchatecha. And he said to him, this is Yitzchak speaking, your brother came with guile, or deceitfully, and he took your blessing. So let's look at this word with guile or with deceit. So Rashi says rather cleverly, what he's doing, he's leaning on the Targum. The Targum has a certain word in there that we're told that some people would misread so that it meant cleverly or wittingly. So he outwitted you. It's possible that he's saying he outwitted you. And he took your birthright. He took your blessing. Gersonides comments, yeah, Tetz is a very emotional, explosive scene. Yeah, you can see it in his words. Again, we talk about this. The Torah is so accurate, especially when you're looking at the Hebrew language, that it really portrays sometimes, like we see Rivka, for example, she uses the word halazeh, which is not so common in the Torah, right? Kind of portraying her dialect, right? So when people, the speakers, or even Avram's servant, Eliezer, he uses the word for give me something to drink, which is more of an Aramaism, right? And so the different speakers, you see this all throughout the text. It's capturing the way that the people really spoke, right? Really showing that we had an oral tradition of this stuff memorized. It was important to people. Gersonides says, your brother came with guile and took away your blessing. It is questionable whether the original blessing was given as prophecy or as prayer. It obviously could not be a prophecy if Isaac can now say that Jacob took it with guile. But if it was a prayer, what would prevent him from saying for Esau too? And then I love this part. This is really the reason I put this comment in here. This part here from Gersonides. He says something which is, the more we know, brothers and sisters, the more we need to really be like this. Do not get to the point to where, oh, I know that, la la la, or whatever. But really, we really need to be able to say, like Gersonides says, I wish I knew. I wish I knew the answer to this. I don't know. I wish I knew. It's important, but I don't know. The blessing must somehow share elements of both prophecy and prayer. And as we go through the Torah, even when you're fluent in the Torah Hebrew, right? You don't need to look anything up. When you're reading along, there are sometimes question marks that come up, like who's really saying this, or there are points of ambiguity in the text, right? This word has different meanings. Which meaning is implied here, right? And it's important, I think, to acknowledge the mystery that we have in the Torah, as well as the questions that it answers. It's always there beckoning us to go deeper, to search for those answers that even the sages were not always able to find all the answers that are there, that there's purpose in our study from generation to generation, interacting, wrestling with the divine. Genesis chapter 27, verse 36 and 37. Ya'aqov. And I wonder if he's saying this out loud to his father, or if it's in his own heart. I think he's saying it loud. And he said, no wonder his name is called Ya'aqov. V'ya'akaveni zeh v'amayim et bechorati laqach v'hine atza laqach birchati. Okay, so this, you see we have, let me colorize it, make sure everybody sees it. See, we have this in the name Yaakov. It looks like a verb in the imperfect. Yaakov, meaning he grabs a heel. He heel grabs. The verb seems invented, backtraced from the word that means heel. Again, that's why we have our doggy on the screen. That's the healer, right? Remember, that's what the name means. Not a healer like a doctor. A healer as in he bites at the heels, right? The people's heels. And so look at the verb he's using here. It goes on to say. See the verb? Now we have an actual verb. Esau is using it as a verb. You see? It's the same. You see the consonants? So that's what's happening. It's like, no wonder his name is Yaakov. And then the vav, because Yaakov, he Yaakoved me. The ni means me. Like ko in Tagalog, right? He Yaakoved me. You see? These translations that say he usurped me and all this stuff, this is a later development that the Edomites have of the word, where this gets reintroduced into late biblical Hebrew. This is not the meaning in Torah times. It's because of their bitterness towards us. You remember, even when we come out of Egypt, they don't want to help us, right? The Edomites, they don't have anything to do with us. And when Jerusalem gets destroyed, we're told in Psalm 137, what do they say? The psalmist calls for God to remember the Edomites, for they cried out on Yom Yerushalayim, on the day of Jerusalem, meaning its destruction. Hayasod ba, to the foundation, to its foundation, right? Like meaning tear it all the way down. They were exulting in our suffering, exulting in the destruction of the holy place. And so it makes sense that this enmity that they had with us was passed down from generation to generation, that they didn't even want to help us. Even Moshe appeals to them, look, you're our brothers, and they don't want to have anything to do with us, right? So in their dialect of the language they spoke, a perverse Hebrew, it did come to mean something like, backbiter, trickster, usurper. And then that later gets reintroduced into Hebrew as the kingdom of Edom is conquered. So people, you have to understand, it's called Diachrony. There's stages in the language. There's certain times in the Hebrew Bible where a word has a range of meanings, and there's a time in the Bible where it does not. And this is certainly not the case. It doesn't have. We see the introduction here. He's starting to use it negatively, but the clear sense of the word is to grab the heel. No wonder they call him grabs heel, and he has grabbed my heel. Zeh fa'amayim. This is the dual, guys. So it means these two times, or can mean, or it's lovely. I didn't see this until just now. This word pa'am, it means many things. Okay, it can mean like a moment, like a time, like this time. Not like time, like you look like time. Look what you've done to me. But time like occurrence, right? This occurrence, right? So he's literally on the plain meaning of the text, zeh pa'amayim, these two times, right? These two occurrences. He's grabbed my heel. But it also means stride. Pa'am means a stride, like the stride of your step. Like how wide is your stride? Right? Is it a forearm length? Is it a meter? How big is your step? Right? I think here in the Philippines it's usually a centimeter. Right? I'm sorry, just kidding. So pa'am. So there's a play on words happening here, right? So he's saying these two times, but he's clever, even in his anguish. He's also saying, he grabbed my heel these 2 strides, right? Like I'm stepping, I'm walking, and he grabs my heel, right? So yet another indication that even wicked Esau has not yet developed this word to mean usurper yet, or trickster or something like that. It doesn't, because the language he's using is language of walking, right? Does everybody see that? Thank you, Ted. Ted says, perfect explanation to correct the false image of usurper. Tom says, the prophet Obadyahu has a prophecy against Edom, and Edom was totally destroyed during the Roman Empire. Yeah, Edom gets theirs. They are no more. Although if you're a British Israelite, then you believe that we are fake Edom, that we're actually Edomites pretending to be Jews. It's a ridiculous notion. Yeah, so anti-Semitism always draws up some interesting parallels. Okay, so continuing on. And he's going to do some interesting he's going to use other words that really demonstrate his position, that it's his fault. All right. Et the chorati. So now before the verb, so this is emphasis. He's emphasizing this. So he's saying, my birthright, right? Bechora means birthright. Laqach. And you see I have this little Ugaritic writing here. These are my Bible notes. It reminds me when I see it to go with the Ugaritic meaning of this word. So one of the meanings we learned that this word has in Hebrew, we learned from Ugaritic, is to buy. Laqach can mean to buy. And so I think that's what he's saying here. And I used to think that was just my understanding because of the Ugaritic, right? But then while doing research for the Josh today, I came across, who was it? Oh, I should have. I did take it in my notes. I just didn't include it here. One of the sages, he also says that it means to buy here. So we actually have a tradition of this. So he's admitting now, my birthright, laqach, he bought. So he's saying what the 2 times, the 2 strides were, right? My birthright, special emphasis, bechorati, laqach, he bought. Oh yeah, here, I'll show you the notes on this. Okay, there it is. There's Ugaritic, laqach, to take, receive, or buy. In the context of Esau's complaint, it makes more sense for the first rendering to be bought and the second to be taken, as I have rendered collected. Okay, this is my notes in my book on that, okay. Vehine, and behold, look, now look, Alta, now, right? I like how this guy talks. It's kind of like some, I don't know. It's like he's a bit, at times he's got finesse to his speech, and at times I guess the emotion is getting the best of him, right? Like before when he said I, he just interjects I into the sentence. Now, and now look, now, laqach birchati, he's taken, he's collected my birthright, right? So first he bought it from me, he's admitting that he bought it, and now he's collected. So at this point, Yitzchak has to know the truth. Oh, you got rid of your birthright. You sold it. Vayomer, and he said, Halo atzalta li beracha? Have you not reserved, like held back for me, a beracha, a blessing? Or as we say in Yinglish, a bracha? Yes. Dr. Vera says Jacob tripped Esau in his heels 2 times. Exactly. That's what the text is saying. And you can see it, right? Even if you're not studying Hebrew, you can see the play on words that's happening. And that word for 2 times, that it means also 2 strides, like 2 steps, right? It's so clear. But, you know, people, they just, usually when I look at the translators, I assume innocence, right? That they just innocent. But in this case, I really think it is the spirit of anti-Semitism really the fires of the flames fanned by the wicked Martin Luther, Yamach Shemo, that covers all the Protestant denominations, that they end up translating these anti-Semitic way, because more than any of the more than Abraham, more than Yitzchak, Ya'aqov is seen by the Gentiles to be kind of like the first Jew, right? Because his name becomes Israel, right? So even though we understand that we're equally from the whole line, nevertheless, so if you're going to attack our fathers and make us look like, you know, the stereotypes that are given to Jews as greedy, as, you know, sneaky, as though charging interest for loans, right, when nobody else was allowed to under Roman Catholicism, that kind of stuff, right? If that's going to happen, then it makes sense to attack Yaakov. In translation, verse 37. Vayan Yitzchak, vayomer Esau, hen gevir, samtiv, lach, et kol echav, matati, lo labadim, ודגן ותירוש שמכתיב ולכה איפה מה אעשה בעיני. So then, okay, so accordingly Yitzhak, okay, I'm sorry, he answered. I thought it was a different word. I thought it was Ya'an. It's from Anat to answer. Then Yitzhak answered, and he said to Esau, look, hey, look, but behold, Gvir samtiv, as a master, I have placed him or set him or given him lach, meaning over you, right? Literally 2 years. So like Hebrew has this idea that the master is your master, right? You know, so he's yours. That's what he's saying. He's your gevir. And now special emphasis. He's emphasizing, and all his brothers, meaning all his relatives, natati, I have given lo to him, la avadim, as servants. Okay, so let's back up. There's all of his brothers. Let's get this. Dr. Vera says Jacob bought / traded with the red stuff. Tom says Jacob took the garments of Edom from Esau in exchange for a red soup, right? Yeah. Thank you for reminding us of that tradition there, Tom. And Dr. Vera says verses 36, 37 are so pathetic. Yeah, I know. It's a terrible scene, isn't it? Just terrible scene. And you can kind of understand why the goyim, they often side with Esau. I mean, I remember years back, I was on some forums, and man, all the goyim just attacked me, right, for me mentioning how wicked Esau was and how foolish he was to trade away the birthright. It was amazing. They all related with Esau. It's like he was their father or something. And of course, some of them were good old boys. They're hunters and stuff, right? And I was telling them, look, guys, just because you like hunting doesn't mean that Esau is the good guy here. Just because it's something you like to do, and he also did that, therefore he's like somehow representing you. But no, it was just terrible. And the goodness, yeah, it's even a little stressful remembering that. Just everybody piled on. Everybody, even the other Jews in the forum just got quiet. I'm just like, hey, where are you guys? Nobody wanted to be part of it. But it is pathetic. But he deserved it. You need to remember, he deserved it. By our tradition, he was a rapist of engaged women, right? Rapist and seducer, not always raping, but he had raped one in the field, but the fields are hinting about this. So he's not a good guy. And even if you didn't believe any of the traditions, he's the trickster. Do you understand this? Esau is the one who agreed to sell the birthright, and now he shows up to collect. He knows darn well that he sold it. You remember we talked about last week the emphatic language that was used by, you can see in the text, by Yaakov. He uses emphatic, strong words, and swear to me and all these other things many times over to make sure it's clear you are really selling it. This is not a joke. I'm not joking with you. I want it. And the text, and in case you want to argue about that, the text says that Esau despised the birthright. The verb bazar. Vayvez Esau et ha-bechor. He despised it. For whatever reason, he despised it. I think Ted had commented that because of the responsibility implied, right? Because being the father of the nation, it was not easy. And that we know the trials that Yaakov ends up going through with Yosef HaTzadik, primarily, and the death of Rachel. Dr. Vera says, did Isaac know that Esau sold his birthright? He does now. He does now because Esau just admitted it with laqach, right? That was my point, ensuring that it means bought, right? So repeating the Hebrew word like this in parallelism when they use the exact same word, oftentimes the different nuances implied, right? So that's why I think this is bought, and now he's collected, and now he took. He bought it, and now he took it, right? So he knows now. I'm not sure that he knew before now, but he knows now for sure. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah. You have to think that he didn't. Otherwise, he really was allowing himself to be bribed, right? I'd like to assume that he did not. Okay. Which also talks, it really testifies about Yaakov's character, right? He didn't lashon hara his brother, right? Imagine he comes back to his father. Guess what? Guess what? I just bought the birthright. La 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 la. Oh, really? How much for? Some lentils. Could you imagine how ticked off the father would be? Really? That's how he sees our family, right? That's how he sees our contribution to the world, right? So yeah. So I think it's about speech again. The kind of undertone that we have in all of the parasha today is about speech, proper speech. We have here Esau's admitting, right, what happened. He betrays himself by his speech. And we see by inference that Yaakov did lashon hatov, good speech, right? Even though his brother is wicked, he's not broadcasting that to his parents. For him, they shall be avadim, servants, or slaves even. The Rashbam comments, I have given him all his brothers for servants, meaning, and what a servant acquires, his master acquires. So this is an interesting mathematical reasoning that Rashbam is doing here. He's saying, if you have been given to him, then whatever I bless you with, he'll get anyway. You see? That's what the Rashbam is saying. Because in those days, there's no personal property for the slave, oftentimes not. Whatever he acquires goes to the master anyway. The slave is working, digging a ditch, and he finds some treasure. Well, he's on his master's time. It belongs to him. Like, if you're an engineer and you work in an engineering firm, in the States at least, and then you're at home, let's say, after work, and you have an idea for an invention, and you invent something. Guess what? And you go to patent it. That belongs to your employer. Usually they have a contract like that, right? Your mind is theirs. You are a slave until your contract is over. This is for employees, not so anything you invent is not your own. You don't get to profit from that. They can come after you for that. Dr. Vera says, yes, I agree that Jacob did not tell Esau about selling his birthright. Yeah, I know what you mean, Yitzhak. Tom says, Esau is similar to the Palestinians and the Arab people, very rude and aggressive. Yeah, that spirit of Islam, I think, right? Yeah, I agree. And even the attitude, like I said, reflected in Psalm 137. Aru, tear it down, hayasodba, to the foundation. It's really, I mean, it's not good enough that we're getting destroyed, but you want to make sure they utterly destroy. You got to celebrate it. Like, I remember, I will never forget, on 9/11, I was working in Florida. I was at NASA that day, working at NASA, and I remember loading up the webpage on Fox News, and it just said plane hits tower, right? Huh. And then later on, we see there's another plane, and after that, they go to ThreatCon Delta. We had to move our cars away far from the building, and then after that, they sent everybody home. Things got escalated, and then I was out of work for like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something. They shut the base down, and I remember watching on the news the Palestinians. You could see little children and adults and grandparents all dancing in the streets at our misfortune, just dancing, having joy about the 3,000 Americans that just died in an instant. I agree with you, Tom. There's a spirit in that area among the peoples who are thorns on our side. I mean, really? You're dancing? It's pathetic and disgusting. And so, God will reward them for that, just like Esau, just like the Edomites eventually got rewarded.
Hey, this is the end of this Drosh segment. Thanks for watching. Please support this ministry if you'd like to stand with us financially. You can visit patreon.com at the address on the screen and sign up for a monthly or one-time donation. We would be very thankful for having your support. And join the conversation at t.me/messianic chat. All kinds of chats about messianic topics happen over there with over 50 people. All glory to Adonai. Kol kavod l'Adonai.